Premier, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks, Sarah.
What information led the police to declare the attack in Wakeley last night a terrorist incident?
Well, the New South Wales Police Commissioner made that determination at 1:30 in the morning based on information suggesting religiously motivated attack by the offender and the fact that it was premeditated, as well as other information that is part of the ongoing investigation in Sydney at the moment. It's important to note that the designation of a terrorist action is for investigative purposes. It opens up a range of tools that investigators will look at in the days ahead to ensure that we keep the people safe.
Was it the right decision?
I believe it was. There's obviously rules and legislation that govern it. It is a legislative requirement to give extra powers to New South Wales Police to execute their investigation. And at times like now in Sydney, when you do have an active investigation, obviously the police need to make sure that they've got powers in place. This is a judgment call. My judgment is it was the right decision last night.
The police commissioner said the critical fact was motivation. Now, does that rely on what the attacker said at the scene and the fact that he travelled there, or is there more information about the lead-up?
Look, in part, Sarah, I can't go into all of the investigatory details that New South Wales Police are currently operating under. Obviously, that's part of the investigation in the days ahead. I should also point out that the decision to declare it a terrorism investigation was also validated by the Australian Federal Police in conversations between New South Wales Police and their federal counterparts yesterday evening.
I mean, one of the reasons I'm asking this, apart from, of course, to understand how the designation happened, is because some community leaders have reacted to the decision, asking how it was reached so quickly about such a young person, only 16 years old. Their question is, did police know enough about him to make that call?
Yeah, look, it's really important to note, and I made this clear to community leaders that I spoke with today, that this is not a designation about the person of interest currently in police custody. This is a designation that is required under legislation to unlock powers for that inquiry, and police made that judgment. This is not a performative gesture. We're not making one crime ranked higher than another. This is part of the police's investigation, and there's legislative requirements that mean that the New South Wales Commissioner needs to determine that a crime may be a terrorism activity. It's validated by the Minister for Police to unlock those special provisions that the inquiry required.
We know this, that a New South Wales court last year charged the attacker with being armed with intent to commit an indictable offence. Was there any knowledge back then that he held or was developing radical views?
The latest information I have is that that's not the case. He wasn't on a terrorism watch list from the New South Wales Police or their federal counterparts. Now, that's important information. I understand the community concern about that order. Obviously, that will form part of the investigation by New South Wales Police, as well as any particular look at the inquiry after this initial police investigation takes place. But I'm not prepared to offer a long commentary about those events because, as you would appreciate, the offender is in custody facing very serious charges, and I don't want to jeopardise them as they move through the courts.
I just want to go on to talk about those events outside the church. How do you explain the response of the crowds?
Well, it's difficult for me to put myself in the mindset of someone that would choose to attack a New South Wales police officer or try and take justice into their own hands, other than to say that it's completely deplorable. I spoke to several New South Wales police officers this afternoon who'd been severely injured as a result of riotous behaviour by some people at the church. That's distressing. It's absolutely not on. It's very dangerous for a few reasons. Firstly, taking justice into your own hands means that you'll be met with the full force of the law. Secondly, it's diverting police resources away from the investigation into this terrorist act. And lastly, community religious leaders unanimously have called for calm and condemned any violence, even retaliatory violence, in Sydney today.
Considering what we saw last night and also threats to the Lakemba Mosque afterwards, do we have a problem with social cohesion?
Well, look, I'd just say that obviously in a city as big as Sydney, in a state as big as New South Wales, when you've got a multicultural, multi-faith community, it's hard to get 100% of those communities and those members of those communities doing the right thing. But what I would say is the vast majority of people of faith in New South Wales not only would find that kind of violence deplorable, but would never ever participate in it. And in fact, it's completely antithetical to their religious beliefs. It's the opposite of what they're taught on Sundays from the pulpit. So I have enormous faith in our religious leaders. I have enormous faith in the people of New South Wales. We will come together. There's some bad actors out there, Sarah, but they do not represent the vast majority of good people in New South Wales, particularly people of faith.
Are social media companies responsible for controlling the spread of material that incites violence, the like of which we saw last night?
Well, they're responsible for it, but they don't seem to be doing much about it. And I have to tell you that in the last 12 hours, New South Wales police and community leaders have been battling misinformation spreading around the web, inciting community members to rush to particular religious facilities and mosques and churches on the hint or the rumour of some kind of violent activity taking place. Look, it's very dangerous. We want to work with the Commonwealth Government on shutting down some of the accounts that cause particular trouble overnight. But I'm not going to lie about it or sugarcoat it. It's very difficult to maintain community cohesion when outright lies are spread within the community, inciting the worst fears of particularly young people.
So you said you're going to work with the federal government to shut down specific accounts, is that right?
That's what we hope to do. Several of the sites were actually given to us by religious community leaders this afternoon in a meeting that I had in Sydney, where Muslim leaders expressed to us concern about some web pages that were just spreading misinformation.
And just come back to the social media companies that are hosting those pages. What can you do to put more pressure or to get a better response from those companies? Because from what you're saying, they appear indifferent to the problems you were dealing with last night.
Well, look, these are Commonwealth laws, but if extra Commonwealth laws are required to take down web pages that are inciting violence and smashing cohesion in Australia's largest city, then that's exactly what needs to happen. In the first instance, we'll work with the Commonwealth Government to pull down those pages, but I can't emphasise enough how difficult it is to contain a combustible situation when false and malicious rumours spread like wildfire in our community. We need to be in a position where we're dealing with truth. In the meantime, and this is the message that I sent to religious community leaders, act on advice and information that's provided by the government or the police or senior religious leaders, and don't jump at the first sign of a social media account with the most inflammatory information possible.
Premier, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, Sarah.